Welcome into the NFL opening line report. We got NFL playoffs, divisional round with the man, the myth, the legend himself at Teddy_covers on Twitter. Teddy, welcome in. Happy Monday morning to you.
Happy Monday. Drew, glad to be here. Though this legend stuff is starting to freak me out a little bit, because I still think of myself like mentally, I'm still like the 30-year-old that move out here and I'm the young up and comer, not the legend. Koken's the legend, So I appreciate the high praise, but I'm not a legend, dude. I'm just a working guy.
And humble. That is a good quality to have here, Teddy. But we're coming off a wild card weekend, and Teddy, it's one of the as a fan, the better NFL weekends I can really remember, man. The way the NFL set this up, 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, I was a big fan of it. But want to ask you, is there anything you kind of took away from this past weekend to use this upcoming weekend as a sports bettor, maybe get a little edge here before we break down each and every game?
So I'm just in terms of answering you mean as a broader level or team by team? Because team by team, we're going to go through all the analysis. Broader level, we've seen underdogs do very, very well in the wild card round. That doesn't necessarily translate to the following weekend.
Okay.
In recent, the wild card, the underdogs were going into Sunday. Underdogs, I believe, were 14-1, and there are a good handful of games that were right around the number. But at closing numbers, dogs were on a 14-1 run wild card weekend going into Sunday, and 2 favorites covered yesterday before the Browns blew out Pittsburgh. Which now the streak is 3-15-1 to the dogs in the wild card round, so it's not quite as strong. But certainly the first round of the poll, and it's been a good round for me. The last 4 years, I'm 9-0 in wild card round. I went 3-0 this past weekend, admittedly with one wrong side that got there in terms of Washington, which was not the right side in that game. My handicap of the game didn't come through at all, and I still was able to cash a ticket thanks to A, the line getting inflated, and B, Tampa's defense. What's that? Yeah, Heineke was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But if Tampa gets in the 30s, Washington's not supposed to cover. And that was a big part of the handicap, and Tampa got in the 30s. So that wasn't right. But the question was, is there anything specific that we can take away from last weekend to go into this weekend? And honestly, as a broad question, my answer is no. Okay. There's nothing that stands out as like, oh, yeah, we saw this happen all around the league last week, and we expect more of that this week. No. These playoff weekends, there's very little carryover from one weekend to the next. Oftentimes in terms of performance as well. So it's not like I'm looking that I picked up something this last weekend. Oh, yeah, that's something, It's much more about the matchups, the handicaps, and the point spreads and totals, obviously, than it is about any prevailing trends or angles that we saw this weekend that we expect to carry over.
No, Teddy, good stuff. And you bring up the Washington football team being the wrong side. And I'm with you. I thought kind of similar to you in terms of their defensive front having success, and they really didn't. They didn't get after Tom Brady like I thought they would. But I don't necessarily think it was the wrong side, Teddy, even though we kind of got the handicap wrong, because Heineke kind of saved us in that, making it like, the Washington football team was right in the game. So I don't think it's fair to say that the Bucs were definitely the right side and Washington was definitely the wrong side. Do you disagree?
Tampa was a lot better than Washington in that game. Okay. And equally as importantly, at least in terms of my thought is, when you're watching a game and you have the wrong side of it, okay, you're watching going, please let me squeak this out, and then I'll know next time that this isn't a team that I want to fade and all that kind of thing. Okay. And that was the way I felt that whole game, because my handicap was Washington's pass rush is going to affect Tom Brady. That was the whole handicap, is Washington is capable of getting stops against this Bucs offense. It wasn't, all right, Washington's going to move the ball up and down the field. It wasn't Washington's going to take advantage of opportunities. It wasn't any of that. It was Washington can control the line of scrimmage and they can give Tampa problems on the and they didn't. Right. Brady's uniform was clean. There was no pressure. And that was wrong. That was a wrong part of the handicap. So when you cash a winning bet and you're wrong with your handicap, you love, those, they're nice when they happen. Because next up for some of those where you handicap right and you didn't get the cash. And of course, I mean, playing a contrarian bent in the postseason is not going to kill you. And when that line moved again, 7.5 up to 10.5 even. I will say this: don't get on the wrong end of those line moves. If you're laying 10.5 and with a game that was 7.5 earlier in the week, you're not going to win in the post. You're not going to win in any sport at any time, but in the playoffs in particular, those are ones that you have to be disciplined enough to keep yourself away from. But there's certainly an element, Drew, of let's talk about some games, dude. I feel like I'm rambling on here about nothing.
Sure.
I don't even know what I'm talking about right now.
All right. Well, want to give a shout out to the chat box first here, Teddy. Clint in the house. Paul from England. O+ as well. Casey, welcome in. Michael, Nate Dogg, all you guys, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us live. If you're watching on replay, feel free to drop a comment below. Clint with an interesting comment. If it were Alex Smith, Washington wouldn't have scored. I don't disagree with you, Clint. And it's interesting that Teddy and I both talking about kind of having the handicap wrong. The move on the push of the points as well was wrong, because it seemed like Heineke gave him a little extra push offensively and keeping him right in that game. But like Teddy said, let's get into the games, guys. This is the divisional round opening line report, Saturday, January 16th, kicking us off here. Afternoon kick, 4:35 Eastern, 1:35 Pacific time here, Teddy. We got the LA Rams at the Green Bay Packers. Of course, the Packers off of the bye, -7-point home favorites, 46 being the total in Lambeau, kicking us off divisional round, Teddy. What are you thinking here? LA Rams, Green Bay Packers.
And just a heads up, I have no doodly oops this morning. There was had we done the show at 6:00 last night, there was a huge doodly oop, but that's already been corrected in the market. The market's put out a bad number for a playoff game, which, that surprised me. But that's the last game we're going to talk about, not the first. I will say this: if you like I thought this under might get pounded, and it went down from. So let's use a format, Ted. Opening my number 5.5. Packers, shorter than the markets. The markets open Packers 7 and 46.5. Now we're down to 7 and 46. There's a couple of 7.5s popped up there. Not many. It doesn't look like the broader market's going to move to 7.5 right now. From a total standpoint, there was an initial move to the under. There are a couple of 45.5s out there right now at leading indicator books. None of those make me. I'm not convinced this total is going to go down any further than the 46 was prevailing number right now, unless the weather forecast is bad. It's a little bit too early in the week to get to that. Certainly when we talk about the Rams in their win over Seattle, another team that had a quarterback change, or an unexpected QB change, with Walford coming in as the starter and then Goff replacing him relatively quickly and leading the Rams to victory. But it wasn't Goff that led the Rams to victory. It was the Rams defense. And we talked about this on the opening line report last week. I believe the line I used was the Rams have a Super Bowl caliber defense. They have a defense that can win games by themselves. And now they've done it 2 weeks in a row where the defense has legitimately won games by themselves. But we are talking about a warm weather team going up to Lambeau in January, where the Packers haven't had home field advantage. And this year they do. And they've talked about it. And the Packers, the only rested team in the bunch. For LA, significant concerns about Aaron Donald, who left the game with a rib injury. Sure. Significant concerns about Jared Goff. Walford's not going to be able to go. The reports I read this morning said that Walford's going to be, with the neck injury he suffered after taking that hit, he's not going to go this week. They were very surprised. And the Rams, one of the more banged up teams still standing. Now there's only 8 teams still standing in the NFL. And of those 8 teams, I saw a ranking last night that the Rams is the 7th most, or the second most banged up team. Only Cleveland worse when it comes to the injury situation for LA. But as we know, in the postseason, offenses attract attention, defenses don't. And we all know about what the Packers offense looks like. Hey, man, it's great offense. We don't know. A, Green Bay is not the most battle-tested team. B, they've had issues in terms of defending power running games. And what did the Rams do right offensively last week? They ran the football really well against Seattle. That's one of McVay's strengths. So in theory, if Donald is healthy, the Rams may get some pressure at the line of scrimmage against Rodgers and may be able to keep the Packers offense off the field with their running game. And from a defensive standpoint, the Rams defense is elite. So for all of this, Packers, there's going to be some, if this gets to 7.5, it's coming right back to 7. There'll be wise guy support for LA, even though the Rams aren't a team we think about winning games in the cold and snow of Lambeau Field in January. But again, 7-46, this line doesn't look like it's going anywhere. And even, total wise, it feels 7-46 until something changes when it comes to either weather or injuries or something like that.
Okay. It's surprising on this total, Teddy. I think it is a little bit high. Speaking of the Rams, total-wise this year, 5-12? Shaded towards the under there, and there could be weather issues, of course, being up in Lambeau Field this time of year. So if you had to choose, would you think it goes off 7-46, or would you kind of lean to maybe a little under push?
So again, we've seen an under push already. There were 46.5s down to 46. There are a couple of 45.5s out there now. But the 45.5s out there now have juice the other way. They're pointing back up. 45.5 over -15 or 45.5 over -13. So those are all pointing. They're not telling us we can expect more under money coming in right now.
Okay.
In my opinion, the Rams are the single strongest under team still standing, in terms of an offense that is limited, an offense that wants to run the football, and a defense that's capable of getting stops. I mean, the Rams have been strong to the under, as you mentioned, all year, and they're coming off an over game. So my initial lean there is definitely towards a relatively low-scoring affair. From a side standpoint, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to think about that for a few days. I'm interested in good defenses catching points, and I'm interested in elite quarterbacks against teams that don't deserve to be in the cold, or that don't want to be in the cold. So it's one we'll think about. Lean under initially.
Teddy, we got two games on Saturday. The nightcap here, 8:15 Eastern, 5:15 Pacific kick, 303, 304. The rotation numbers, the Baltimore Ravens at the Buffalo Bills. This one on NBC. Looks like 49.5, but mostly 50 out there in the marketplace being the total right now, Teddy, and seeing mostly -2.5 here. That's the Buffalo Bills as the home favorite in Orchard Park, New York, Teddy.
Look ahead line. Look ahead line. We don't have look ahead lines anymore. My powering number. It's so funny. You get into I've got the number on the left is usually a look ahead line, but the number on the left now is now my powering number.
And they're not doing look ahead lines? Like we can't see the matchups for next week, the possible matchups at some sports books?
Yeah. I'm sure a book will have them. I haven't seen them. I didn't see them last week. There were too many potential matchups.
Right.
This next week we may see more. I'll definitely take a look for them later in the week. But I didn't see any for this week's games. But my powering number is Bills -2.5. The markets moved from 2.5, looked like they were going to 3 last night. And instead, as soon as it got to 3, there was heavy money coming in, taking Baltimore plus the 3. The total we've seen a modest dip down. You talked about it was 40, anywhere between 49.5, 50 last night. Last night was mostly 50s when I went to bed. And this morning was mostly 49.5. But really, we're seeing it go back up to 50 today. We're seeing two-way action on that total. We're seeing enough Ravens money initially that makes me feel fairly confident that we're not going to see Buffalo get bet up to 3. All right, this line, I don't, even though the Bills were the hottest public team in the NFL going into last week and had all these double-digit victories in a row and took a ton of public money in the, that was a sharp square divide game of the weekend, was the Colts and the Bills on Saturday, and then the Sharps won. Sharps won just about every game this weekend where they were divided with the pros. Not surprised, it was a good weekend for a lot of the guys at Sports Memo, myself included, which is always nice. But the Bills' defense was a question mark early in the season. They weren't good for the first half of the campaign. And down the stretch, Sean McDermott coached them up and they played a heck of a lot better. Against Indy, the Colts had 9 drives. They were in Buffalo territory on all 9 drives and had some of the issues. They had some third down conversion issues. Phillip Rivers made some awful passes. Phillip Rivers was not good when it mattered most. And that saved the Bills because that was the game that, they didn't play their best and could have easily lost. And yet they managed to escape with a 3-point victory. But again, the Colts were in Buffalo territory on every single drive. And that's a concern, especially when we think about what Baltimore did to Tennessee last week, where they shut down the Titans at the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. It was really as an impressive performance defensively, as you'll see. And when you talk about a team with a consistent history of going on the road in the postseason and winning games, that's John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens, who now I believe have more road playoff wins than any Harbaugh. Does Harbaugh have more road playoff wins than any coach in NFL history? I think it's at that level now, off the win against the Titans. So it's certainly a Baltimore team that's used to winning playoff games. They're used to winning playoff games in hostile environments. From a defensive standpoint, they're coming off a brilliant performance. And the markets are going to give them respect in the way that they don't give Buffalo respect because of that proven postseason track record, because of Harbaugh's postseason track record, and because of a defense for Baltimore that's coming off a great game, whereas Buffalo's defense has shown vulnerability and got absolutely gashed against Indy. Again, if Phillip Rivers connected on passes, Buffalo wouldn't be here today. If Rivers had some awful throws on key downs with the game on the line. And now that Baltimore's got that, they got off the schneid. Lamar Jackson's got his first playoff win. And Jackson made plays. He made bigger plays with his feet than with his arm, but he made enough plays with his arm to get whatever. He gets the credit. They were, Lamar Jackson can't win a playoff game, and now he can. And now that monkey's off his back. And now you can certainly envision a scenario in which Baltimore goes up there and wins. And I saw the comment where someone said, this is a hard game. I agree. This is a hard game. I don't know what I'm going to do with Bills and Ravens yet. I really don't. Side or total. It's one that will, I realistically, if I'm this far away from a play on Monday, I'm not likely to get there by Saturday night. Thanks, Josh. Josh Gillum, 8 road wins, most in history. Look at these guys. They're awesome. Thank you. Love the guys in the chat because they can do the stuff that I can't do while I'm talking. Really appreciate that. But I thought it was. I thought I ran into that stat last night. But it's a hard game. It is. I don't know what I'm doing with it.
Yeah, Teddy, I agree with you. This is a great game. This is probably the most difficult one, at least off the open for me as well. I do have a couple questions for you. Well, one, I just want to point out a couple things here. Both really good against the spread all year long. I guess both of them pretty identical records, I guess, depending on when you bought them. 11-6 against the spread this year, both Buffalo and Baltimore. Similar straight up records. Baltimore 12-5, Buffalo 14-3. Over under the trends, Buffalo a little bit more of an over team, 11-6 to the over, whereas Baltimore pretty much 9-8 matchup trends over under. But Teddy, one thing I want to bring up here is it looks like Buffalo weather on Saturday, Sunday, it kind of changes here. So we're going to have to kind of watch it a little bit closer to the weekend, but it does look to be in the 30s, windy. If it does even get worse weather-wise, who do you think that actually helps though, Buffalo or Baltimore in bad weather game?
So we have potential for bad weather in Green Bay. We have a January game in Wisconsin. We have a January game in Northern New York. We have a January game in Kansas City, which can and does have nasty weather. So we're only one dome game this week, and the other 3 are all a potential cold weather site. So you better believe you better check your forecast. And you check them today, you check it again tomorrow, and you check it again on Wednesday as you head into the weekend. In terms of which team would it benefit? Well, Baltimore's a team that runs the football really well. Buffalo's a team that creates a lot of big plays out of their play action game and a quarterback bootlegs and chucking it downfield. If it's windy, it's an issue that's definitely, I would say, it's going to affect Buffalo more. If it's cold, I don't know. Does it affect anything? I'm not convinced there's a clear edge for one team over the other if it's icy conditions. In general, you want the team that can run the football better when it gets colder, and Baltimore's a team that can run the football better. And that's why this line's not going to 3. George Nowinski saying, I live in Buffalo, weather not looking good. Great. I appreciate that, guys. And I want to say hi to Paco Healy, man. I haven't seen him in a long time. Thanks for checking in, Paco. Appreciate it. But so, yeah, bad. I mean, I don't know that bad weather. If it's windy and rainy, that does help, or snowy, that does help Baltimore. If it's just cold, I'm not convinced that's the case.
Okay. Fair enough, Teddy. So we got 2 games on Sunday to hit here, guys, but I do want to give a shout out to Teddy Covers. Check him out, Sports Memo and WagerTalk.com off the sweep this weekend in the NFL. Actually, NFL last 11 weeks, guys, 24-12, 67%. NBA since August, hot, over 60%, 41-26. And guys, this season, 5%, full season for 2020 in the NFL, 70%. So he's hitting the big plays as well. And my favorite stat, guys, since 2015, week 1, 57% in the NFL. That's 224 and 170. 57% long-term in the NFL betting markets. Check them out, WagerTalk and SportsMemo.com. It's $9 Monday, but make sure to check out those extended packages as well, because they are you get more bang for your buck. So check them out, not only WagerTalk, Sports Memo, but on Twitter as well, at Teddy_covers. I'm on Twitter at Drew Martin Betts. Feel free to shout us out. Any questions? We actually got a question here, Teddy, maybe just a quick answer from you. Teddy, you ever get stopped or noticed regular on the Vegas streets from sports bettors who recognize you?
A lot of times when I go into the sports book, someone will say hi. And if you see me in the sports book, come up and say hi. It's fine, but not when I'm walking down the street. I'm not. Believe me, I'm not even a D-list celebrity. You know, when I go in the sports book, in general, someone's going to know who I am, but not walking down the street. No, generally not.
Okay.
And I don't want to. I don't want to ever be like a big, like Kurt Herbert Street, and you can't go anywhere or do anything, and everyone's like, "Hey, dude." No, I don't. I love it when people come up and say, "Hey, Teddy, I watch you. Hey, Teddy, I see you. Hey, Teddy, you're a big jerk. I hate all your plays. Hey, Teddy, you lost me." Whatever it is, I don't mind that at all. It's always fun. It's always fun to meet people that watch the shows. So if you ever, please, if you see me in a sports book, come say hi. But no, I'm not like mobbed when I go on the street or anything like that. It's not even close.
No, and Terrence, I can add on to that. I've been to sports books with Teddy, and people love Teddy. I'd say like probably second to Kelly in Vegas. It's Teddy Covers. People kind of run up to and say hello. So if he won't say it, I will.
But I'm not close to Kelly. Okay, when Kelly walks into a book, everyone's paying attention to Kelly. When I walk into a book, it's like, hey, I think I recognize that dude.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kelly's probably, you can make the argument, like B-list celebrity, as much as her brand has grown. But guys, we got the Sunday, January 17th slate here. 2 games to finish off the opening line report Monday, each and every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Also broadcast on Periscope via Twitter. 2 games here on Sunday. We will hit Teddy 305, 306, the rotation numbers here, 305 Eastern, 12:05 Pacific. Kick Cleveland at Kansas City. We're seeing the Chiefs -9.5, but mostly -10 now in the marketplace, Teddy. The home favorites at Arrowhead Stadium, 56 being the total. What do you think of Cleveland at KC?
And of course, 10 puts the books into a strong teaser protection range where the 7-point teasers don't get below the 3. Obviously the 6-point teaser. We normally talk about the 6-point teasers. With 9 being that teaser protection line. But in a game like this, in the postseason, where teaser liability becomes enormous for the sportsbooks, it really does. I mean, the teaser liability going to last night. You think about it, all 4 sides in the early games on Sunday, it doesn't matter which one you have on the teaser. You have the Bears in the teaser, well, they get there. You have the Saints in the teaser, they get there. Obviously, the early game was the same story. Both sides cash teaser. So in terms of teaser killers, the Browns winning straight up last night was a huge one. And this line sitting at 10 right now, you already know the wise guys want to tease KC down. The public wants to tease KC down. I'm not surprised that off the opener. And again, this was 9.5 everywhere last night. And today it's 10 everywhere. The 9.5s are basically gone. There's one that I see on the WagerTalk live odds screen, the Sports Memo live odds screen, but that's about it. And I don't think it's going to be there. And the leading indicator books are pointing towards 10.5 as opposed to 10. I don't know what gets to 10.5 necessarily. My number, again, my power number for the game is only 7.5. And maybe I've downgraded the Chiefs a little bit too much. Obviously, we saw Kansas City in the postseason last year. Remember, the Chiefs last year in the postseason fell behind big early, both home playoff games and in the Super Bowl, and came back to win and cover all three. And they were down to 24-0 early.
Oh, yeah.
Wild card
Tennessee.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just exploded. Is this year's Chiefs team the same? Kansas City does not have anything resembling the betting bandwagon this year than the one they had last year. Why? Because they've been a point spread disaster area. All right. Even back in the Chiefs over the back half of the season, they cover once the last 9 games. Not many, Drew. You got the number?
Yeah. Out of their last 5 games, they only have one ATS cover. They're 1-4 their last 5 against the spread.
You go back further, it's 9 because they had they lost 8 in a row and covered 1 finally.
Wow.
I think it might be 1-9 ATS last 10. I should pull that up real quick. Maybe I'll do that the next time you talk. But KC's been a very bad point spread team. Okay, they have not covered these double-digit spreads. Patrick Mahomes, for as good as the Chiefs are, and we all know how good the Chiefs are, all right? Their A game is good enough to beat any team in the NFL by double digits, including Cleveland. In theory, the Browns match up fairly well with the Chiefs. What's KC's vulnerability on the defensive side of the football? Power rushing games. Teams that can move the chains, keep the offense off the field, and run the ball down off the gut against Kansas City. That's their defensive weakness. That's Cleveland's offensive strength. We saw it yesterday with Chubb and Hunt, and that's why the Browns' ability to run the football is why I had confidence in betting them at Pittsburgh, even though the coaching staff was out and even though they had issues on the offense. I thought they were going to be able to run the football, and they were. In theory, Cleveland's supposed to be able to run the football against KC as well. In theory. On the other side of the equation, if you're going to beat Patrick Mahomes and slow down the Chiefs offense, okay, you have to get pressure with 4. You can't blitz. Mahomes will pick apart the blitzes. You have to have, your ends have to be able to create pressure. And when you think about what Myles Garrett's been able to do this season, in theory, the Browns are going to match up fairly well against the Chiefs. I ran into this one on Twitter. Do you remember, and I'd forgotten about the game, do you remember when Baker Mayfield played up against Patrick Mahomes in college? They had one meeting in college.
Yeah, I'm guessing
1,700 yards of offense in that game.
Okay, I do, yeah. Yeah, they went back and forth. Oklahoma versus Texas Tech, right?
Yeah, now we have very different defenses. Okay, this wasn't, these are NFL defenses. It's not Texas Tech's defense. It's not Oklahoma's defense from a couple of years ago. But this has the potential to be a lot of fun. It really does. From a total standpoint, again, the markets are going to stop at 56. You know what I mean? It's really, when you get to the margins in the NFL, when you think about this distribution of scores, you're going to think about a bell curve. All right. And if you don't know what bell curve is, Google it real quick. It's goes, up and down. Yeah. Where the majority of outcomes are going to come towards the middle. But when you get to the margins, when you get on the edges, that's where the markets struggle to price things correctly. And this is a game you can make an argument this total should be 60, but the markets don't go to 60. Okay. The markets only go to 56, 57. They say, all right, that's enough. And there's buyback and there's auto buyback, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, the Chiefs were a pretty good over team at home in the postseason last year, but down the stretch of the regular season, the offense didn't click that same way. It really didn't. And I spent weeks asking myself why. Watching Chiefs game, why isn't it clicking? Why isn't it clicking? Why isn't it clicking? And I never came up with an answer that I was comfortable with. Other than that, they just the level of execution on the offensive side of the football didn't look as strong as it was a year ago. That may be a concern against Cleveland. From an injury standpoint, the Browns have more injuries than I think any team still standing. They're not a healthy squad. They could well be, they just beat a team that they hadn't won at Heinz Field in 17 years and had won a playoff game in however many years, the biggest win ever in modern history for the Browns. I can understand all the money coming in on KC, at the get-go from the opener of 9.5. I can. And Andy Reid off a bye is something to respect. There are things pointing here towards the Chiefs, and yet the markets aren't getting a 10.5 on this game. I'm not convinced they will. And, as I'm talking this out, the more when you see one of the mistakes I make, and again, I've been doing this for 20-something years. I make mistakes all the time and reading stuff wrong. But one of the mistakes I make is I say, oh, it's gotten to 2.5. It's got to go to 3. But when it doesn't get there, when the markets stop at 2.5, it means they're stopping at 2.5. And here's a situation where the markets kind of stopped at 10 for KC. We didn't see that extra money come in to put the 10.5 starting to push up. And maybe the fact that it stopped at 10 tells us that if the Browns injury report is reasonable, maybe we see some Cleveland money later in the week. Maybe. Just a theory.
Great analysis, Teddy, on the line movement and getting resistance and it not pushing through that.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. Resistance. when it meets resistance, that tells you that there is sharp money on the other side, and it's reached some resistance at 10 with the Chiefs right now.
Okay, a couple things, Teddy, before we move on. One, guys, because we were talking a little college there, we'll hit the national championship game before we end it. Teddy, and I wanted to bring up Mahomes and Baker Mayfield. Interesting, and I never really figured it out. I think they were actually college teammates at Texas Tech. Baker Mayfield transferred to Oklahoma. I could be wrong about that. Patrick Mahomes redshirt freshman year, and maybe that was a reason he did leave. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure these guys know each other and spent a year together. And also Kansas City 1-7 their last 8 ATS is what I'm showing.
Sure, you can go back further.
Okay, well, I think in November 1st, Kansas City 35, New York Jets 9, and they were laying 20. So I think that they won that game November 1st.
I don't remember. I'm going to find out. I said I was going to look it up, and I never did. So I apologize, but I'll be the. So you asked me two things, and now I forgot the first one.
Okay, well, actually, Brock's chiming in here that, the chat box on the NFL opening line report, really great, guys. He's saying, he's a Texas Tech fan, and that is right. I wasn't sure that Baker Mayfield did transfer because, he felt Patrick Mahomes kind of chopping on his back as the backup quarterback there, but it looks like that could be the case here, and I'm pretty sure they do know each other, for whatever that's worth.
And I've got you the same thing. I got you with the Jets, the cover against the Jets on the 1st of November. They've played 2, 4, 6, 8 games since then and covered only once. So, yes, you are absolutely correct.
Okay, so that was since November 1st. Kansas City just 1-7 ATS. And like Teddy was talking about, resistance there. Guys, one thing, and I haven't been doing this as long as Teddy, 7 years is my straight job. When a team is 1-7 against the spread, they really don't take a lot of money, from the public after that, even though their straight up record is so good and they're the number 1 seed. It's more about cashing tickets. Yes and no. When you're the Chiefs, you're still the Chiefs. That's true. They are the defending Super Bowl champions. I do need to throw that out there. Well, the margins of victory for Kansas City. And again, they won their first 7 before losing against the Chargers in a game with no starters. But they beat the Panthers by 2. They beat the Raiders by 4. They beat the Bucks by 3. They beat the Broncos by 6. They beat the Dolphins by 6. They beat the Saints by 3, and they beat the Falcons by 3. So nary a victory by more than a touchdown since they beat the Jets on November 1st. They're laying 10 to a playoff team here. Teddy, we ready to move on to Tampa Bay, New Orleans? Yeah. All right, let's do it. The nightcap here on Sunday, last game for the NFL playoff weekend, divisional round, NFL opening line report, guys, each and every Monday. Come and join us on the WagerTalk YouTube channel, 6:40 Eastern, 3:40 Pacific. Kick in this one, Teddy. 307, 308, the rotation numbers. Tampa Bay at New Orleans for the 3rd time this season. 52.5 or 52 being the total. -3 is what I'm seeing pretty much across the board right now, Teddy, with some juice on that 3. That's the New Orleans Saints laying at home. controlled climate there in the Big Easy. What are you thinking here, Tampa Bay at New Orleans?
Whew, there's a lot to talk about here. So, and again, during the regular season, when we got 16 games to plow through, I make sure I get notes and I put my little highlights. So I'm not scripted, but I got all my notes in front of me. And for this stuff, I like to talk when there's only a few games. I feel much more comfortable like just talking off the cuff and talking off the top of my head and not relying on notes. I'll try to remember on everything that I talked about for this one. My powering number for the game is New Orleans -1. This line was opened at 5.5. The Westgate opened 5.5 last night. And it was down to 4 by the time they could tweet it. And it was down to 3.5 within minutes. And then it was down to 3 today. If we did an opening line report an hour after the games ended, this would have been the emergency betting alert. It was clearly, I was stunned that there was a 5.5 out there. I thought 4 was high. 3's the right number for this game, maybe. Again, my number's 1 for what it's worth. The trend bettors are going to be very interested in the team. When one team beats the other team twice in the regular season, what happens in the postseason? And the answer is what happens in the postseason. The team that won the 2 regular season meetings is dominant. ATS in the 3rd meeting, with New Orleans beating Tampa by double digits twice this season. The 2 worst losses of the year, I believe the Bucs had all season. No, wasn't it? Yeah. Those were the only 2 really bad double-digit losses were the 2 against New Orleans. So we ask ourselves, is it a matchup problem? And it might be. It might be. When you talk about how the Saints defense funnels receivers in a way that's difficult for Tampa's offensive game. Tampa wants to take shots downfield, and the Saints defense has been real good at avoiding the big shots downfield. The question is, the only question is, from a quarterback standpoint, I thought Tom Brady looked a lot more comfortable than Drew Brees against what I would consider to be comparable levels of defense. Maybe Washington's got the better D. Maybe Chicago's got the better D. I put them comparable. And Brady looked a lot more comfortable in the pocket and comfortable in that offense than Brees did yesterday. Brees looked like an old quarterback with rib troubles that was struggling to get the ball downfield. And even with his receivers coming back from injury, it wasn't like New Orleans was taking a lot of shots. It was a dink and dunk offense, and they didn't control the line of scrimmage. They couldn't. I know Kamara finished with 99 yards, and he tried to get that last yard and didn't get it, and it made it pretty, would have been 28-3 had he punched it in right there. Instead, the final goes 21-9, so maybe there's line value on New Orleans because the game wasn't as big of a blowout as it could have been. I'm not sure that I buy that. If the line's any different, if it was 28-3 versus 21-9. But Kamara got to 99, and all of his yards came late against the Bears defense that was tired. It wasn't like New Orleans' offensive front was able to control that line of scrimmage against Chicago and consistently give Brees a ton of time to throw, consistently open up lanes for Kamara, which may be bad news against Tampa. It's also Brady. It's not Brady. I was wrong about Brady. Did not look uncomfortable in the cold. He looked just fine. I'm like, if you live in Tampa for a year, you'll be uncomfortable. Was not the case. We'll see what if the winner of this, assuming if the Packers win, the winner of this game's got to go up and face Green Bay, and that may be real cold as opposed to what we saw in Washington yesterday, and that could be an issue. But this on the fast track of Tampa, a place they've already played this year, and a place where they played poorly. I remember that opening day loss for the Bucs. Brady made mistakes. He threw a pick 6, if my memory serves correctly, in that ballgame. And the second time, the offense didn't work at all when they got smacked at home. Remember, they were favored in that game. They lost that game by 38 points against the spread, and now they're only a 3-point dog in this one. So, but it got bet down to 3, and now we're seeing 3 minus juice again. 3 minus 15s, 3 minus 20s out there. I don't think it gets back up to 3.5 necessarily. I think there'll be enough support for Tampa in the marketplace to keep it at 3, but I was really surprised to see Westgate open this at 5.5 last night. Again, my powering number in the game was 1. And in the playoffs, I don't see differentials like that. And again, when you talk about liability, books would much rather put up a bad line on Sunday night, take 3 or 4 big bets, and then have a correct line for the rest of the week for a playoff game than the other way around. To have the bad line later and be taking all kinds of bets at that. But I'm not convinced this is going to get back off of 3. I think there will be enough Buck support to keep it at this number. We have seen over money come in, 51.5, now 52, even 52.5. I mean, I probably could have done a doodly oop on the over. But again, I don't know that it gets higher than it is. I don't know that you have to rush to the window to bet over 52 right now. It looks to me like this. I'm not seeing signs that it's going to go a ton higher. That said, if you like the over, bet it now. It's not going to hurt. We're not going to see money come in on the under to say, oh, wow, I've got 3 points, the worst of it. That's just not how it's going to play. Not in the late game on Sunday, barring injuries. And again, it's supposed to be, like Cleveland's got, I forgot to mention that Cleveland's getting all, the coaches back this week, and Batonio and all the guys in the offensive line back this week, and they'll get a bunch of guys back. Denzel Ward could be back this week. For this one, it's not like we're going to see a bunch of guys who didn't play last week and now they're going to come in, or there's anything to significantly influence the total marketplace. There's not going to be weather conditions. So there's nothing to say, I'm not convinced it's going to go up any further. It might. But I don't see any indicator saying this one's about to go down anywhere. So if you like the over, don't bet 52.5. Please shop for the best line. There are plenty of 52s out there, and there are even a handful of 51.5s out there you can get now if you like this over and want to lock in on a Monday morning.
Teddy, I can see why they opened it at 5, though. I mean, I guess the market is telling us it was a bad number, but the 2 times they played before, it was such a blowout. I think the first time was the first game of the year, New Orleans blew them out. And then the last time they played, like you talked about, Tampa Bay, the 3-point favorites, and then getting blown out 38-3. So I can see why they put it at 5, but the market's telling us it's down at 3 now. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see it back up to 3 and a hook, maybe touch 4. No way.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think I just don't see it. And I thought Brady was a lot better than Breeze, and I think that's going to matter.
And their O-line was really good against what a lot of people think is, the best, if not a top 5 defensive front in Washington.
The Bucs offensive line was dominant. The Saints offensive line I'm not going to say got smashed, but it wasn't dominant.
And another reason, guys, to maybe look towards the over of 52, like Teddy talked about, maybe not seeing a lot of under money, plus the fact out of all 4 games this weekend, this is the one in a dome controlled climate. So you're not going to have to worry about weather closer to kickoff. So guys, that's the 4 games here in the NFL divisional round. We are talking Monday here, so we got some time before kickoff. And we also have a big game tonight, Teddy, the national championship game. Some guys in the chat box were asking any quick thoughts here. We got Ohio State at Alabama in South Florida, seeing 74.5, 75 as the total. We're seeing the Alabama Crimson Tide creeping up here, Teddy. It was 8 over the weekend. Now we're seeing 8.5s, even some books showing minus 9-point favorites here, talking about the Alabama side in Miami Gardens tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific kick. Any quick thoughts you wanted to throw out there to the watchers?
So I have a 5% play on the total in this game. I thought the more I thought about it and the more I handicapped it and the more I read about it, I'm like it was an absolute play that really stood out to me. So you can get that play. Again, it's $9 Monday. Get it for $9 over at WagerTalk or sportsmemo.com. I'll put it this way. All right. I know that Alabama didn't score a lot against Notre Dame. They did whatever they had to do in the first half. Second half, they played ball control. They weren't really worried about lighting up the scoreboard in that contest. But prior to that, they scored 52, 52, 55, 42, 63, 41, 48, 41, 63, and 52 since their season opener against Missouri when they only got to 38. Alabama's going to get theirs. I genuinely believe that. The question is if Ohio State's going to get theirs. And if Ohio State gets theirs, it's going to be Buckeyes and over. If Ohio State doesn't get theirs, it's going to be Alabama and under. Is Justin Fields, are his ribs ready? And again, we've seen there were 2 games this year, really, where Alabama's defense got tested. They struggled against Florida a fair bit. They struggled against Ole Miss a fair bit. Balanced offenses with good quarterbacks. I don't know. Ole Miss didn't have a great quarterback, but teams that can take shots downfield, and Ohio State can take shots downfield if Fields is right and if Alabama's pass rush doesn't get in his face. But there were lots of games where Alabama was, that defense that was like, oh, the defense wasn't that good this year. I'm like, let's see, they had a shutout. They had 2 other games where they held their opponents to 3. And then they had, 5 different games they held their opponents to 17 or less in blowouts, which isn't easy to do. That means you have third stringers on the field in the fourth quarter. I wouldn't sell the Crimson Tides. I've been hearing a lot of, Alabama's defense isn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't sell them short necessarily. But I do think Bama has the potential, to get in the 40s tonight. And if Ohio State's going to hang around, they're going to have to trade points with them.
Okay. And Teddy, I just want to add on one thing, a stat I like here, play that I'm going to look to play this game. Alabama first quarter, they scored 146 points in the first quarter. Their opponents just 37. Of course, Alabama, like Teddy touched on, scoring 48 points per game. I'm looking towards Alabama maybe in the first quarter, Teddy, but this is a game I actually haven't bet personally. I'm going to do a lot of research today, look to bet some props because it's a fun one. It's the Monday nighter, the national championship game here, Teddy. But guys, thanks for joining us. That's some national championship looks, unless you want to throw out anything here before we shut it down, Teddy.
Well, if you're playing Alabama the first quarter, you better hope they take the opening kick, and I'm not convinced they will. You're laying a half a point in -35, -40, -45 in juice. I'm seeing a 2.5 -35 for the first quarter. Bama first half's been pretty good this year and recent years, anywhere from -4.5 to -6 with Alabama in the first half line. And again, you can find a -5 at -110. You can find a -6 at -110. It's up to you. You can lay 5 or lay 6. Shop around.
A lot of props up on this one, Teddy. So I mean, just wild props too, which is somewhat fun to look at. But guys, you can check it out there, really at any Vegas shop or offshore. And huge shout out to the chat box guys. No one. We got Johnny Outlaw, like always. Thanks for joining us, Christian as well, Colin, all you guys out there. Appreciate you joining us from all over the world, really, Teddy. We're getting people from Mexico, from Europe in the house. So thanks to all you guys, Terrence as well, Josh, all you guys. So for Teddy Covers, I'm Drew Martin. Each and every Monday, the NFL opening line report. We got the next week. It will be same time, same place, guys. So come back and join us. Like we said, huge shout out to the chat box. If you're watching on replay, feel free to drop a line below. Check out Teddy, WagerTalk, sportsmemo.com. I mean, the stats are up there, guys. 57% since 2015 in the NFL. That's 224 and 170, 24 and 12, 67% run in the NFL the last 11 weeks. We got $9 Monday in the extended packages as well on discount. Teddy, anything else you want to throw out there throughout the whole show before we shut this down? Shut this show down, Teddy.
So tonight's a championship game. All right. It's okay to have fun with the championship games. It's okay to make bets in the championship games. It's okay to make big bets in the championship games. Don't put half your bankroll on a championship game. This isn't a game where the lines are extraordinarily weak everywhere. All right. I got a big ticket play. I got a 5% play tonight. It's 5%. Okay. It's not half. It's not 80%. You'll find, and this is the thing that I guess a lot of casual bettors struggle with. There's value on the NBA card tonight. There's value in the college hoops card tonight. The national championship game is just one game. And this is an even bigger lesson when it comes to Super Bowl and people had everything they have in the Super Bowl. And it's like, where's the weak line? Shane, I appreciate that. Robert, I appreciate that. Love it. We're nationwide. I'll do a little ZZ Top. Because I'm bad. I'm nation. Oh, God, if I start singing, it's going to be awful. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the games. Good luck tonight, guys.
All right, guys. Best of luck. We'll be back next Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Come back and join us for the NFL opening line report. Guys, best of luck.